Spoilers.
That's what we do.
How well do you believe the public schools are addressing the issue of poor language skills?
Yeah, Dr. Coomer's right about this question. This is just an awful question. But we do it all the time, unfortunately. We blame in the high schools. The high schools blame the middle schools. The middle schools blame the elementary, and the universities blame us. Well, stop blaming each other. You know, we're all, should be, keyword should be in this together. It's supposed to. A lot of shoulds and supposed to's you're going to probably hear down the road. Working toward a common goal. We prep you here to get you ready for this. We prep you here to get you ready for that. So by the time you hit our doors, grammar and what's right, what's wrong shouldn't be such a shock. Many of my students going through my speech courses, sometimes it's the first time they've ever written an outline for a speech or an outline of a paper. So we have to back up and do some basics. Now, yes, we can sit and do the blame game and do nothing about it. But as a public school ourselves, you have to take some ownership and responsibility. I mean, we can sit and whine about it all night, but if we're not doing our part to try and resolve the situation and teach those that may be behind, they're never going to get it. It's going to get worse. And if we pass them, it makes all of your degrees worth nothing, because we've just passed somebody along and then your degrees lowered and lowered and lowered. And we see more and more people going on to get master's degrees now because everybody has bachelor's, which is sad, but it's slowly becoming that way. So I don't want to blame. I think it's our part to go in and be sure that we're teaching this stuff. I know part of my course, we have to go through outlines and we do draft days, and the next question we'll kind of hit on this a little more. But I think it's unfair to put blame on any one particular public school, but I also think it's unfair to assume common sense should kick in with our students if it hasn't been exposed to or hasn't been taught yet. So personally, the first time I'm encountered with a situation like this, it's a teaching time for me. It's time to pull them aside or send them to our writing center or come to my office afterward and we'll work one-on-one with your paper. But beyond that, then some of the responsibilities start shifting back to that student. You've been exposed to it, I've given you tips and tricks and tools on how to use it. Now it's time for you to jump in and start implementing it. So I can drag you kicking and screaming, but you've got to be willing to take those steps yourself too. So it is a give and take both on our part as instructors and as well as the students being willing to do the work. As Dr. Coomer was mentioning before, you don't want to just turn it in to turn it in. My hope with any assignment that you do is to do your best, and we want to see your best effort. And blowing us off, and I'm hoping none of you in this room are going to be like this type of student, I know. You fail a paper, and it's like, oh well. And F's are a lot harder for us to grade because it's word by word, line by line. You're scratching up those by the ways and OMGs and LOLs that we see in papers, and that takes time because we want you to get better. So throwing something away that we've taken the time and effort to try and help you for the next paper, it's almost a slap in the face because we want you to be the best student as possible. So my hope is the instructors do our job, but the students also in return do your job to become that much better of a student as you go through and know when is the right time to use that type of language, when it's not, so that way you just become the best student you can possibly be and enter the workforce ready to go. And they're not wondering, what the heck kind of degrees are they handed out of Grayson, because this is the kind of stuff you're turning in to me as your boss. So that's definitely a goal I have as an instructor. So I'll let you take the fun question.
Well, this question about how public schools are addressing these poor language skills, the public schools don't have a fighting chance. Everything is so dictated by the state, and the first thing that goes out the door are the language and grammar skills. When I've been at places grading tests, Texas required tests, the first thing they tell us, let the grammar go. See if it's structured right, don't worry about the grammar. We would have instructors in there who just couldn't do it. They're just so ingrained in that. They get pulled and have to, they would be chastised for, trying to look at the grammar, not passing one of these essays through because of the grammar. And so I really think public schools and teachers have such an incredibly hard time trying to follow the dictates, and it's so close to them. They don't have a lot of room, and so that is just one of the first things that goes. The other thing, because it is kind of going to the wayside, I always ask my students, when's the last time you had formal grammar instruction? And I'm amazed, just amazed at what I hear. Not in middle school, sometimes I'm hearing in elementary last time, maybe in junior high, 6th grade. And I'm thinking, I had it all the way up to when I graduated from high school. Every semester, every grade of my life, up to the 12th grade, we had grammar. And that's one of the reasons I know it. And I always try to encourage students with this idea, maybe you didn't get these skills in public school, but that's okay. Maybe you have no clue what a noun or a verb is. This is the place to say so and figure this out. There's no shame in that. You know, we can't address that if we don't know it. And so much of those language skills have to go backwards, you know, where you have to kind of start at the very beginning of what is a sentence and what is a noun and a verb before we can even talk about some of these issues about comma splices or run-on sentences. You've got to understand those things, those basic things to move forward. And I always try to encourage students too, that they're just rules. You learn them, they don't change much. Yes, English is kind of tricky. There's always an exception to a rule, but it's not all the time. It's, you know, every once in a while there's going to be an exception. 98% of the time it's going to be pretty standard. They're just rules. You just learn it, and then you start to recognize it. And then once you learn it, you got it down, then you can break those rules. You can master that and use it to your advantage. That's the thing about those language skills, is that you want to take them and manipulate them to the best writing and the communication that you can do, but you have to know the basics. There's always a distinction when somebody's writing in a paper and there's a fragment. If that person knows that, you know, he or she's using that fragment for intent, or he or she is doing it and just doesn't realize it's a fragment, it always comes across. I don't know how, but it's always very clear. And so you don't want to be in that spot. So this whole idea about the public school systems being the culprit, I can't say that's the case. But I do know this, when I was teaching some contrastive linguistic courses, and I had mostly education students in my classes, and our focus was not grammar, but we were going over something in the class, and one student said, what's that deal with the possessive and that apostrophe? I'm like, what are you asking me? She's like, I don't know how to use that. I'm like, you're going out to teach small children. You know, you should know this. And so I just had to stop, and we just worked on those things. But what I saw happening is the educators coming out of my university didn't have those basic skills to teach to the students that they would be responsible, you know, for making sure they knew these things. So it's just kind of this perpetual problem, and it just gets worse along the way. So that's all I know to say about that one.
I don't mean to sound harsh here. I can't think of a nice way to say this. I don't really care what my students' public school experiences have been. I don't care in the sense that I don't want them to use that as an excuse. I don't want them to give me a victim kind of, I don't do victim is what I usually say to my students. It's about what you're doing right now, and if you are taking every opportunity given you to learn. My only responsibility, as I see it, is to guarantee my students the opportunity to learn. That's all I do. And ultimately, it's up to you. And if you want, as a student, if you want to just continue in this nebulous cloud of poor language skills and misspelled words and all those kinds of things, that's really, at this point, your choice to do that. And I personally know, and there are several of them sitting around this room, many of the instructors at this college spend hours and hours and hours explaining, you know, I need to be teaching history, but what am I writing on my papers? ITS with an apostrophe equals it is. ITS without is a possessive. And I write the rule down. So there should never be an excuse ever again on the part of that student to make that mistake again. But you, as a student, you have to learn to take responsibility for your own learning. Doesn't matter where you went to public school or whether they just taught to the test or what I hear all the time. I just had a coach for history. And I go, I don't care. I'm married to a coach. And he's one of the hardest history teachers. I'd hate to be in his class. So we can come up with all kinds of excuses, and I think what Dr. Fair said is correct. If we play the blame game, it's counterproductive, we go nowhere, and you do not progress as a student. So I wouldn't do this either. It'd be awfully easy to do that. But I'm not going to blame the society. I'm not going to blame the public school, but I do blame the student who doesn't take advantage of the opportunity in the here and now.
Well, you'd think that being the representative here from Sherman ISD, I would have more information for you about how well we handle that issue, but I've only been at Sherman ISD for a short time. I do have to agree with Dr. McBee about the realistically expecting teachers to be able to incorporate that into their classroom. That said, and also Dr. Fair said you might hear a lot of should, or we should do this up here, and so I'm about to get into that. I saw recently where in South Korea, actually, in their early childhood programs, where it's pre-kindergarten and kindergarten and first grade, they teach basically internet use and technology use to the children, and especially the etiquette. And so even though they're these very young children, they're of course probably like y'all have been on a computer their entire lives, they've been on a cell phone their entire lives. They are singing songs just like Ring Around the Rosie to help them understand what audiences are appropriate and how to communicate with them on a very elementary level. And I would hope, I have 2 young boys, and I would hope that we do a lot of that in our personal lives. I know this question is about what public schools are doing, but just like Dr. Kumler said, I really think that each of us as individuals have a responsibility to understand how to communicate with people. And you'll probably hear me say again this evening, I'm surprised I haven't said it yet, but knowing your audience is extremely important. And your audience can be one person or it can be a room full of people. But I think you need to use your intuition. No matter what you learned in your education, whether it's here or before or after, you need to be able to look somebody in the eye or read something on the paper and appropriately respond to them based on your, hopefully, some common sense. and just let that guide you, even if you don't